learning about value investing, and as you're learning about value investing, 2008, you have the crisis, 2009, and now you're learning all these principles, and you're saying like this shit doesn't apply anymore, right? Like it's running away. Valuations are going in a place it doesn't make any sense. Buffett's been wrong for 10 years plus, right? What was your origin story? When did you first learn about it, and when did you make that first purchase? And I'm guessing it was like, oh my god, there's finally a life raft, a savior to everything I learned was great, except I'm not Buffett and it's not 1965 and I don't have a 6 PE ratio anymore. It's like 30. What happened?
We read a book by Tony Robbins called Money Master the Game. And in this book, he just went on and on and on about Ray Dalio. And I was like, my God, this guy
All-weather,
is
right? Yeah.
just all weather, risk parity. And I didn't know anything about any of that. And I was reading the book from Tony Robbins, and he was talking about gold. And people, I mean, this podcast is, I'm assuming it's still published. It's probably out there. I remember we were reviewing his book on the show. He talks about Ray Dalio recommending gold in your portfolio. And I was just like, all right, I've had it. Like,
What's going on here?
I know, like Warren Buffett has told me that if you take all the gold and you put it in the infield of a baseball field and all this kind of stuff, like he has all of his little talking points. And I was like, I'm just not buying it. This is nuts.
Yeah.
Like, if anything, go out and buy a TIPS, right? An inflation protected bond.
But that's the other thing. He had 55% allocation towards bonds when we're at 0% practically. It's like, well, what if they go up?
Levered bonds.
What if they go up? And he's not telling people if you're going to at least buy bonds, you got to buy tips, right? Like I thought that was a little irresponsible. I think we talked about that. I was like, I don't know why he's recently corrected that actually.
So I read this book and I'm saying, I'm sorry, but I've got to read more on this Ray Dalio guy because he's making such a big deal about him. And so it led me to actually finding the video that I think everybody knows about now, called How the Economic Machine Works. And at the time when I discovered this, it might have been like late 2014, maybe early 2015 that I watched this video for the first time. And after watching this 30-minute video, it was almost like this moment where everything you thought you knew about the economy was just kind of, I don't want to say it was flipped upside down, but it was almost like I was seeing in 2 dimensions and I started to be able to see in 3 dimensions for the first time.
Was it the rates? Because he everything's rates with him, right? Like, is that the eye opener for Dalio for you with Dalio?
The eye opener for me was just the long-term cycle.
Yes, yeah.
It was,
I wasn't even and the rates and how everything is related to the risk-free rate.
I wasn't even aware of the long-term cycle.
Bro, it's like
all I knew is that
gave us the inside playbook. The problem is, by the time he gave it to us, and we found out like maybe a couple years after that, right? Maybe 2016, 17, I'm like, this playbook doesn't apply anymore, right? Like it's
yeah.
I mean, he's right about there's a crisis coming. He's wrong about the approach on how to protect against it, in my opinion. But
he provides the 4 talking points on like how it gets resolved. And then he talks about this beautiful deleveraging at the end, which everyone beats him up about, and I think for good reason. And then that's it. But that didn't, for me, it didn't invalidate all the other stuff in the video that I just intuitively was looking at and saying, that makes total sense. And that's scary as hell. Because before watching this video, I was in the market during the 2008 crash. And, I watched my stocks that I owned go down in a, dramatic way. It was just like this moment, like, my God, like, what the hell is this and what caused this? And ever since 2008, 2009, I was always under the opinion that nothing was fixed fundamentally. But I didn't know what was broke.
Yeah.
I just knew that QE was them printing a bunch of money and buying the bond market. I knew that. And I was just like, this isn't solving nothing. Like, central banks have to let things normalize if we actually want to live in a free and open market economy. And they weren't letting it happen. And so when I watched the Dalio video, I quickly was like, all right, Well, now I realize why Tony Robbins is making a big deal about why this guy's so smart. So now let me read anything and everything I can get my hands on that this guy's ever written.